Welcome to Eldercare Illuminated, Torchlight's caregiving podcast. Eldercare Illuminated addresses the ins and outs and ups and downs of caring for your loved ones. Join us for interesting conversations with eldercare specialists, geriatric care managers, attorneys, and ordinary people with extraordinary caregiving experiences.
Welcome to today's episode of Eldercare Illuminated, brought to you by Torchlight. I'm Lenore Tracy, Eldercare Practice Leader at Torchlight, and today's guest is Deb Hallisey, a training professional who left work to care for her mother shortly after her father died. She ended up with a new career, working with and supporting caregivers. She's also in the process of becoming a certified dementia practitioner and is the host of a website, advocateformomanddad.com. Thanks for joining us, Deb.
Oh my gosh, Lenore, thanks so much for having me. This will really be fun.
It is going to be fun. Today, Deb is here to talk to us about what I'm going to call slow caregiving. You may have heard about the slow movement, which encourages a shift toward doing things at a slower, more thoughtful pace, the right pace, whether it's applied to preparing meals, as in the slow food movement, or doing anything else. Carl Honore, author of the 2004 book In Praise of Slowness, coined the phrase, the slow movement. Deb is a huge proponent of revising our understanding of and valuing the personal relationships that get colored or even damaged by the caregiving experience. So, Deb, tell us exactly what you mean by getting back to the relationship.
Sure. So, it's interesting. It was actually the day of my mother's 85th birthday that I had kind of this aha moment. And I was working out at a meeting, and I said, and I basically said, I'm gonna see my mom today. Today's her birthday, and I said, today I will be her daughter and not her caregiver. And what I mean by that is, as caregivers, we are so task focused. There's always something on the list that you have to do. And that's true whether you are living full time with the person you're caring for, whether you are caring for them only every other weekend like I do for my mom, or even if you are hiring someone and then you wind up coming to visit. There's always tasks. And in that task focus, we lose the relationship we have, whether it's mother-daughter, husband-wife. And in losing that relationship, you lose a part of yourself, and there's a real grief to that. And so what I kind of realized is, even though I had things to do when I saw my mom, that I was going to put them aside that day and really be there as her daughter in relationship with her and not focused on getting the tasks done as her caregiver.
What was it that you noticed or that changed that caused you to look at your communications or your activities in a different way? Because certainly the tasks they're there. They're always there. So what happened that allowed you to see things differently?
I really think it was an aha moment, but it had been one that had been building. You know, my mom is very open and wonderful about talking about what this is like for her. And, you know, we've had multiple conversations around, she's slowly losing friends and family that were her connection to her history. And we've talked about that and what that means in terms of feeling isolated and how hard that is. Like, who do you call and talk to? And when you're talking to them, who do you talk about where you have a shared time in your life? You know, when I was growing up, we did this, or just a shared history together. And so as she's lost people over the last couple of years, it was 2 years into this that I had that aha moment. If she lost people over those last 2 years, it became more and more apparent to me that isolation was growing. You know, my mom, our house was always the house that people came to for parties or for dinner or whatever. And during that year, once she started to come out of the grief with my dad, I started to realize that she was ready to host a party, to have people over. And so started to invite folks like my friends who love her and she loves them. And, you know, they're like, when can we see you? And I'm like, well, I'm at mom's this weekend. How about coming over and having dinner with us? She'd love to see you. And so it was also realizing that, you know, we'd be sitting in the kitchen on a Saturday and I had just done her meds and now I was doing bills and we were going over the ShopRite list. And she loves to play cards and she doesn't get to do that very often. And I'm like, you know, maybe when I can come back, we can play cards. She's okay. That would be nice. And so it was just kind of this slow realization that we had gotten away from the mother-daughter. You know, we used to cook together. We used to play cards together. We used to go out together. And in being so task focused, we got away from that. And I realized I needed to be very deliberate about getting back to it. So, for example, not long ago, I guess it was midsummer, we had one of those, it felt like a fall day. And it was a Friday and I was up there early and I still needed to work and do all this stuff. And I looked at her and I said, we're going to go for a ride. It's a beautiful day. I don't know how much longer, you know, we may not have another one like this during the summer. Let's go for a ride. And we did. And we wound up unexpectedly stopping at two different cousins' house and visiting with them for a little bit and then going to dinner. And it was wonderful. It brought us back to that mother-daughter relationship. So I think being aware of it is key. And then really focusing and saying, here's an opportunity and letting go of the tasks in that moment and just doing it.
It sounds really magical in a way. And I just want to refer back to something you said earlier. You said that your mom's peers were slowly falling away and that she, of course, had fewer and fewer people from her generation to talk to and to relate to. And it made me think also on the other side of that, for us caregivers, as we get older, there are fewer and fewer people in our lives who knew us as children or who knew us as young girls or young adults, young boys, young men, and how what you're talking about, while not having to relive the mother-daughter relationship in its stereotypical way, you're also getting something very positive by going back to that relationship. And especially your mom does not have cognitive impairment, I believe. So you can really share some of the past with someone who was there when you were young. And that is quite a cool thing.
It really is. And you've captured it. You've captured it exactly. It's not only healing for her, it's healing for me.
Deb, can you give us some examples of how you've changed the way you relate to and communicate with your mother that take us a little deeper into getting back to the relationship?
Yes, I can. I think that one of the ways that I changed, I think there's three things. So let me start with when I first became my mom's caregiver. My dad was my mother's caregiver, and he really shielded her from a lot. And when we lost him, one of the first conversations I had with my mother was, look, Mom, there's no more secrets. I'm going to tell you everything that's going on, and we are going to make decisions together, and we're going to be a team. And that set up a completely different dynamic than my mother and I had ever had in our relationship. And I'm not going to tell you it doesn't take work. It does, but no more secrets. We're going to be a team. And really asking her to help make decisions that are hard, and she had never done before, opened up a new line of communications.
When you talk about secrets, and that your father shielded her, are you talking about health issues or finance, or give us a little more information if you're comfortable doing so?
Sure. All of the above. When my dad died, my mother was surprised. I knew how ill he was because I was going to the doctors with him, and I would come home and say to her and tell my brother, who lives nowhere near us, but we talked all the time, we're on borrowed time. Mm-hmm. And when someone has congestive heart failure, that's all you know, and CHF is what my dad tried for. So we're on borrowed time. Well, what does that mean? And I knew, because he and I were having conversations, that he was really tired, just tired of fighting it. Now, I will tell you, we were with him the night before he died, and we were with him when he passed. And I leaned in and I said to him, Daddy, it's okay to go. And he went to me, shh, like my mother didn't know he was dying. And very much about finances, like they live in a 60-some-year-old home. I don't hide the fact if there's a leak. It's like, Mom, we have a leak. Who do we need to call? A lot of things that he protected her from financially and, all kinds of ways that I'm just like, no more secrets. It's not happening. And I have to tell you that one of the things that's so amazing about this is how much my mother continues to change and grow at 86, because I'm saying to her, I need you to step up. And it's been amazing and a blessing. And I tell her all the time, I am so proud of you.
That's a lot. And that flies in the face of the old dog, new tricks saying that people can continue to grow no matter how old they are and can continue to change.
I will share with you that, one of the conversations Mom and I had was that I can't be the only person she talks to. Like, she has to have somebody else to talk to. And what your listeners may not know is that Medicare will pay for someone to come into the home, a social worker, and just have conversation with them if they're going through a hard time. And my mother agreed to that, wow, which is amazing.
Under what, how did you make that happen? I guess under what is that called?
Right. What does that look like? Yeah.
And did the doctor have to order it?
Yes. Yeah. So she and I had a conversation around, I can't be the only person she talks to, and that let's talk to her primary, who we both love. And I just said, I think Mom's still really having a hard time about the loss of Dad. And, she's still struggling with having a caregiver in her home that's not me. Is there somebody she can talk to? And he said, yes. And Medicare will pay for it. I'm like, deal. He had already have a relationship with an organization, a company, and he set that up, and it's been amazing.
That's great. Is that a continuing relationship that she can rely upon?
Yes. I met her for the first time this past week. I was part of their weekly discussion, which was terrific. My mom invited me in, and I said to her, is there a time limit? And she said, no, Medicare will pay for as long as your mom needs and wants to talk. Wow.
That is amazing to know, and I'm sure that our listeners will be really happy to learn that. I'm going to just take a second to diverge from our conversation. We have another podcast scheduled. Kathy Sikorsky, of course.
I do. One of my favorite people. Yes.
We are going to have a conversation probably in our next podcast about some of the things that Medicare will pay for that many providers think there is a limit to, and that there never has been. The law requires, as long as somebody needs this service. We're talking about the GMO law. So I'm going to really want to get that out there for people to understand. Medicare has a lot of things that can help, not just in the strictly medical arena. Seniors need a slower pace. So we are talking about how your mother has been able to grow and change and accept some things that have been clearly difficult for her to accept. I found myself also mentioning whenever I talk to people that rushing just doesn't work when you're dealing with older people, especially the old. How do you, as a very busy businesswoman, lots to do, lots on your mind. How do you slow yourself down?
Well, that's really a great question, I have to tell you. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm better at it at some days than others. And I have to tell you, what I've come to realize is I'm better at it when I set my mind to the fact that this is a weekend with mom. You're not going to get work done. So just let it go. If I don't do that, I'm cranky when I get there. I'm cranky when I'm with her, and it colors the visit and the time we have together. It's not always easy. Now, by the same token, sometimes I'm with my mom. I'm with my mom every other weekend, Friday through Sunday. And sometimes I stay till Monday, give her caregiver an extra time to have the whole weekend. And Mondays are hard because Monday's the day I post the blog. I do writing. Like that's my day to set aside to work. And it doesn't happen when I'm with my mom in the way it does when I'm not. So I try and do work ahead of time to be really set so that I'm not setting up the blog. All I have to do is push some buttons and we're done. I'm also honest and will say, Mom, I need this amount of time from here to here to get the work done. And she's incredibly respectful of that and incredibly supporting of this. In fact, I would not be doing what I'm doing probably without her, because she was the one who said to me when I was still working as a consultant, you need to do something with this. You need to help people some way because you've learned so much. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So she's really wonderful about this. But I'm not going to tell you it isn't hard. Like part of it is just my mindset, quite frankly.
Do you turn your phone off?
I don't get that many calls. A lot more is over social media. When I'm with her, it's not with me. But I will tell you that my mom is endlessly fascinated by it. And we've had some fun afternoons with me on my phone, looking at Facebook and catching her up on the family stuff because her eyesight does not allow her to do that. In fact, one of my video blogs is about the fact that we sat there for one afternoon and I'm reading her information on Facebook. And suddenly she says to me, can you look up Ann Smith? And half the time with my mom, you have to decode things. And I'm like, Ann Smith, you mean if she's died or not? She's like, yeah. Look her up. Sure enough, she's died that year before. She said, maybe that's why I haven't gotten Christmas cards for the last 2 years. And I'm like, that would be my mom. So it turned into an hour of looking up different people, right? She hadn't heard from them. She wanted to know what was going on. Some we found and some we didn't. And she was funny. She says to me, well, that was to spend the afternoon. I'm like, well, not really. I can remember you saying to Daddy, do me a favor and look at the obituaries and let me know who's passed. Because if I'm at Acme and I say, how's your husband? And he's dead, I'm going to feel really badly about that. So it didn't surprise me. But then, and I do have to share this because she's endlessly fascinated by this, Lenore, but she really doesn't understand it. Because the next question she says to me, so that thing you do on the internet, do you have to call them? I deconstruct it and I said, you mean when Anne died, did the family have to call the internet and tell them? She's like, yeah. I said, no, the family just put the obituary in the paper and then that's how they found it. But I will also say that it can be very isolating. Right after Dad died, people were sending invitations to family parties through me, through text or Facebook. And I was sitting there and I said, cousin so-and-so invited us for dinner on Sunday. And she said to me, I feel so isolated. I'm like, you do? Why? She said, because I can't take part in that whole internet thing. And nobody calls me any longer and invites me. They invite me through you. It's huge, isn't it?
That's enormous. And that is, people no longer write letters and write cards. And I think when you're older and you are isolated, and you said your mom's eyesight is compromised, and using a computer is a difficult thing, and the millennials don't want to pick up the phone and have a conversation. So I think maybe reminding other family members to send a card, send a real life invitation, just take a second to do that, because she'll get mail. She would love that, I'm sure. That's something other than bills.
It's huge. It really is. And God bless my family, because I immediately texted my cousin and said, look, Mom's feeling isolated. Nobody calls and invites her anymore. Could you please call her? And that's the new family rule. They might still text me and ask me something or say, this is coming up, are you guys free? But it always ends with them calling my mother and inviting her. And I love them for that.
That is a wonderful thing. And if there are kids in the family, having them call or send a card I think that is just a great boost for somebody who is isolated like your mom is. A while ago, when we talked earlier, you told me a story about cutting your mom's hair and something that you learned from that, not related to hairdressing. And I would love you to share with our listeners, because I think this is a really good point that you're about to make for us.
Sure. So one of the caregiving things I do is I cut my mom's hair. And again, it's a task, right? It's just a task. But for some reason that day I had maybe done everything I needed to do and it was just some quiet time. And so I just really took my time. So do you want it a little shorter in the back? It's going towards winter. Should I leave it a little longer in the front? So, when you comb it back, your head's not as cold. And we kind of talked about what I could do. Because I was doing something slightly different, I had to slow down, comb it more often, touch her more often, kind of figure out the angle and what I wanted to do. And in that slowing down and that touch that was so intimate, my mother just started talking. And I heard stories about her childhood I had never heard before. And so I just kept, even when I was done, I just kept combing her hair and asking her questions and letting her tell me stories. And it just was this like, oh my gosh, there's such intimacy in a touch that it really does open the door to communications in ways I hadn't realized. And it was a lovely, lovely afternoon.
That's an amazing story. And for anybody out there who is taking care of someone with a cognitive impairment, whether they're at the beginning of that journey or toward the end of it with dementia, touch is so important. And when you put your hand on someone's hand or your hand on their arm or you're brushing their hair, whether it is a man or a woman that you are taking care of, somehow that opens up the ability to communicate for many, many people. So that is a really special story. And I think slowing down and brushing your mom's hair, combing her hair, what a special thing that you did together. And people can learn from that. What about other caregivers in her life? So you're with her every other weekend, and it sounds like she's got some caregivers coming in during the week to help her out. Have you tried to help them slow down a little bit and be a little bit less task-oriented? How have you done that, if that's the case?
Absolutely. My mom has 24/7 live-in care when I'm not there. And we've gone through some caregivers. I'm not going to tell you that we haven't. We've had this current one for more than a year and we both really like her, but I don't despair, other caregivers out there. You don't always hit it lucky the first time. Sometimes a caregiver has to leave, etc. But one of the things that I have realized and I have done with every single caregiver, and this is how I've come to realize it. So I go shopping for my mom every 2 weeks. And because it's every 2 weeks, there's lots of groceries. And so I bring the groceries in. And I was with one caregiver in particular who was always in a hurry. And that was one of the things that frustrated my mom about her. Because what I have learned to do is I bring the groceries in, I put 1 or 2 bags on the table, and I sit down and I let her unpack them. 2 reasons. First of all, because of her eyesight, if she unpacks it, touches it, maybe writes what it is in bigger handwriting with a Sharpie and puts it away, she knows where to find it. And B, it's overwhelming for her and she gets confused and frustrated if you're moving too quickly and shoving things at her too quickly. And so there was one caregiver in particular who was unpacking the bags very quickly and puts her hand out and says, "What do you want me to do with this?" And I looked at her and I said, "She can't see that that's lettuce. Put it down. Let her undo the bags. She will set aside the stuff you need to put away. If you need to, leave the room until she's done." And they did.
That's pretty interesting. And especially with an eyesight issue, if you're whipping around or you're turning your back, I think probably if there's a hearing issue, similar things. People move very quickly. You turn around and you're talking, and somebody who's got a hearing impairment, who may be depending on seeing your face, isn't hearing what you're saying. So there's a lot of good that can come from slowing things down and also taking the lead from your mom. So that's another thing that I hear you saying. You're letting your mom set the pace, and you're letting your mom's way be the way.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think that's one of the things here, I think, is the underlying issue. It is way too easy as a caregiver to become the parent of your parent, and you're not. Particularly if they still have all their faculties like my mom does. My mother is a mature, smart woman with all of her faculties. I don't need to treat her like a child because she's not, nor should I treat her like a child. Do I have to slow my pace down because she's slowed down? Absolutely. Is there a gift in that? Beyond a shadow of a doubt for both her and I. Because I do run at a very fast pace. And sometimes just sitting down and hearing, like that's the other thing I've learned. Like when I come in the house that Friday, I cannot like rush in and start doing stuff. I need to sit down wherever she is. Who'd you talk to? How's the family? What do we need to do this weekend? Is there anything in particular you need from me? Half the time it's discussing what dinner's going to be because my mom's Italian and she needs to know and wants to plan it out. But I can't rush in and start doing stuff. I need to slow down, spend time with her, get her because let's face it, she's not acclimated to my being there. And she deserves the right to get acclimated to this, this new force that's coming in with this agenda. So early on, I read a book by a gentleman by the name of David Solie, Solie, and it's called How to Say It to Seniors. And one of the things that was really helpful is he talked about after the age 70 that seniors start to need to process their legacy. And that's not who are they going to leave money to. It is around rethinking their life and coming to different conclusions, which is why when he says, like, if you're really task focused and you're like, we need to do this, they may talk about something completely different because in their head, they're processing their legacy. But the other thing, and this is what was so helpful for my mother, is that because they have lost so much in terms of health and mobility and friends and family, they hold on to control tighter than ever. And if you say, we need to move you out of your home, they are going to dig their heels in and refuse to do it because they need to have control. The best example he gives in their book is a family who was trying to get their mother out of their house because they felt it was unsafe. They had everybody and their brother having this conversation with her, the you needs to, we need to. And they decided to change their dynamic and say, okay, if you want to stay here, we need to spend money to put your bathroom and bedroom downstairs. And that's all they said, and they left it there. And 2 days later, she came back and said to them, I'm not putting any money to this house. It's not worth it. I'm going to move.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And that is always in the back of my head. I can't tell her what to do. She has capacity. She has the right to make the wrong decision. All I can do is keep her safe in that decision.
And give her information. I mean, like that family said, basically was saying you need to be on one floor you need to, it'd be better if your bathroom in your bedroom or downstairs. And if she could get that far, she could come up with a solution.
Absolutely.
That is brilliant. Tell us the name of that author again in that book.
Sure. It's called How to Say It to Seniors. Okay. And the author is David Solie, Solie.
Wonderful. It's always great to pass on good reading material to other caregivers. Deb, thank you so much for being with us. Everybody has a lot to learn from somebody like you who's taking such good care of her mom. Listeners out there, if you don't have Torchlight available to you as an employee benefit, ask your employer to contact us to learn more about how to bring caregiver support into the workplace. Our website is torchlight.care. And you all take care now, and we will see you on the next episode of Torchlight's Eldercare Illuminated podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Eldercare Illuminated, a Torchlight caregiving podcast. Find other episodes of Eldercare Illuminated on iTunes, Spreaker, and Podcast Go. If you're interested in bringing Torchlight Elder or any of Torchlight's other caregiving products to your workplace, please contact info@torchlight.care. That's info@torchlight.care.